Okay, everyone. Today, me and Dariya are speaking with Jason Lindgren of Crow 777 Radio. Crow, we had on the show previously, and we've been on his show several times. And Crow, Jason's been kind enough to interview us, and now we want to kind of pull them apart and get a bit of Jason's take on things. Jason was the director and producer of the Shoot the Moon documentary.
So yeah, I was the director and I put it all together. Like I did all of the physical parts of it, did all the shooting, like all that, all the editing. Had a good friend of mine who is a doctoral professor of music write a score. And then I learned how to do all that stuff in a program called DaVinci Resolve. So Crow was obviously doing all the interviews, being interviewed, and he gave me, I think it was like 6 terabytes on hard drives of all
Wow.
that footage, which I then went through, pared down, and kind of re-edited because I was really, I was very hell-bent on making sure that this film didn't just look like a long YouTube video. I wanted it to have like a cinematic to it. And from what I understand, from what feedback I've gotten over the last 5 years, I achieved that. And we actually entered it in film festivals and it's won 10 awards. So I guess I did okay.
Yeah, and like all kudos to that because definitely it doesn't come off as it's like almost there's always like a documentary coming out on YouTube like every couple of weeks that's getting promoted, and this it doesn't come off as that kind of just interviews and B-roll just slapped together. It's a really well put together documentary.
Thank you.
So I guess let's start off. We were kind of just talking before we pressed record on kind of where we're seeing pop culture go these days.
And maybe because most of our listeners probably don't know you, if you want to give a little bit of your origin story and how you came to become so passionate about this topic, I guess.
So, okay, I've been doing the whole podcasting thing with Crow for about 7 years now. I think we're on. I don't know why I always forget this when it comes up, but yeah, we've been doing it for a while now. I started my own show that was kind of small, grew that channel to about 20,000 people called Secrets of Saturn. I still do it occasionally. I moved it predominantly to Rockfin because I kept having things being massively censored on YouTube. And still to this day, I still get messages about they're going to pull this or that if I happen to run a Crow show or we run something else on the channel that I just think is good info. That because Rose will use it sometimes, and I got to be really careful because that sometimes they'll hit me with a strike, and I don't want to lose that channel for the rare occasions I want to use it, especially for live streaming. Having 20,000 people get notifications for a live stream is obviously cool. So Crow and I started doing our thing together, and then the show just kind of grew enough that one day he called me and asked me if I wanted to leave my job, that the show had grown enough that he could match my meager salary from Guitar Center, where I was working as a manager at the time. And that's it. The show's just been consistent since then, thank goodness, because it's just so much easier to focus on researching and writing and production and all that when you don't have to worry about catering all your time to something else like a corporation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe before we get into the deep stuff, what music do you play, or what instruments do you play?
I'm a singer, songwriter, guitar player, and I'm really into like studio stuff. I'm a total nerd about gear and things like that, which is why I was really successful at Guitar Center because I liked being around music gear, and I still follow that stuff to this day. But my primary instrument is guitar. That's when I write. I always write. Most of the time, I start on acoustic. Occasionally, I'll do it on electric, but usually I just start with chords and a melody and kind of build it up from there. My style is very drawn from like the late 60s, early 70s. I'm a big Pink Floyd fan, the Beatles, even though I know so much about their background. I've gotten to the point, and I actually did this years ago, where I've been able to separate myself emotionally and logically with the whole music thing. Like I know that a lot of the stuff is for social engineering purposes. I know there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. There's a lot of symbolism that's put in it, but it's it's still a thing where it's still art and I can appreciate it for art's sake. So if a song and music moves me, I'm still gonna like it, even though I know so much with some people, especially the Beatles, there's just so much backstory there about what they're doing. So that's why I draw heavily from that whole psychedelic era. And I now know that the majority of the 1960s counterculture movement was indeed instigated by the powers that be. I mean, it's overwhelming when you start looking at how much stuff was manipulated and pushed out for the youth of the time to grab a hold of.
Yeah, we touched on it a bit with Crow. It was funny because I said like one of my guilty pleasures is listening to Kanye West.
Rap is its own thing that came in big time in the 90s. And I think that's just another offshoot that they decided to push. They do this weird thing where it's like pretty much it's a shift on the decades. So like in the 80s, the big thing was like hair metal, butt rock, all that kind of stuff, you know, the tight ripped jeans and the teased hair and all that stuff. When the 90s hit, it's literally like going from first to fifth, where the whole grunge thing comes in and everything looks different and sounds different. It's like, wow. And then I started looking at it, and indeed, there were signs that this was being set up by the record labels. Now, I can't prove that there were orders from on high, but there were a few bands that were signed right at the very end of the 80s, who then would come out with albums in the very early 90s that have that sound. It's like, well, how did they know to change? Because you listen to it, like Soundgarden's a great example. They have a pretty crappy album from the late 80s, and then they come out with what was their big grunge album? Was it Bad Motorfinger? And it's like the sound is different. It's like, well, how did they know to do that?
Yeah, and you guys break it down so well with all the Tavistock stuff too, and it rings true with the ring of truth. And once you kind of hear it, you can't unhear it. And you definitely notice like I heard it on a satellite radio once on a rock channel, and they called it the apathetic 90s. And you definitely, I felt that, you know, I was still just a kid, but I felt that vibe all through the 90s. We're like, yeah, we don't care. Like, you know, we were pounded with the ozone layer and all this stuff, like war, and it was just like, nah, the youth didn't care. It was just like, well, whatever.
Well, they reflected that in the clothing too, because the girls and the guys were all getting kind of androgynous-y. That whole like flannel thing came in. Like people in the 80s, like I remember my high school days, I graduated in 91, so most of my high school days were 80s influenced. And the girls always wanted to dress up, look pretty, do their hair, all that kind of stuff. Once the grunge thing kicks in around 91, everyone's cutting their hair off, getting a million earrings. The whole tattoos and piercing thing started kicking off. And I remember sitting in a Denny's one night around, I don't know, maybe like 95 or so, and looking around, I'm like, what happened to all the girls? They used to like really look cute and all that. And now it's just all so blah. They're wearing like boots and things like that. I mean, like Doc Marten boots, like military armor. And it's like this was not a thing in the 80s. Yeah, you'd have like the occasional person like who was into goth or something where they might dress like that, but that was its own little sub thing. Just in general, the general style, that Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, those were the big four of grunge, as I call them, the big four of grunge. And that was the look they went for. Everybody's cutting their hair off and dressing very just like you went to the thrift store and you're shopping for this stuff that's 20 years old and beat up, and that was it. And everything changed from the 80s to the 90s, and it's very distinct if you actually look at it.
Oh yeah, big time. You see such a separation, and people, you definitely see it. I've seen it a lot with like if you have family members or like friends you grew up with, and their moms still have to this day they still have the teased big hair, you know, like the big curls. They still have that 80s look that they've carried forward for the last couple decades.
Yeah. Yep. If they still have hair, like it hasn't thinned out too much, I do still see that with the older folks. But we're so much time has moved on now that like the 90s is 30 years ago now. It's like, wait, what? When did that happen?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, make me feel old.
I mean, I'm a 90s baby, and ever since I was young, I've always had this like protective mechanism within myself that I would actually not be interested in everything that everyone else was just flocking to. So like Harry Potter, I didn't never even watch like the Star Wars, Star Trek. Like Jeff thinks I'm weird that I've actually never exposed myself, because even when I was young, like in my teenagehood, I thought it was so strange and I just went the other direction. And then yeah, one of the ways I've always protected myself is just by not engaging in a lot of like mainstream culture to some extremes. Like when I was really deep in my wilderness studies, I didn't listen to any music that wasn't like playing live, or whether like people were actually singing like in real life. And I didn't watch any media for almost, I think when we were talking to Crow, I was like, I think it was almost five solid years where I was just like offline in many ways. And it was so healing for me to not have all of, whether I was aware of it or not, like just kind of taking that influence out of my psyche or my soul kind of experience, I guess.
Well, that's a good way to do it. I mean, you're not getting hit with all their messaging and propaganda, but that's what they've ramped up so massively in the last 10 years. They've really, really ramped up like what they're trying to shove down our throats, which if you just want to like really break it down, it's like socialism, communism. That is what they're trying to do. They're trying to destroy our culture of the United States, what used to be the golden age of the United States, that although lots of stuff was going on back in the mid 20th century, like in the 50s or even into the 60s, that Americana has been just wiped clean. And you can look at it decade by decade. It really kicked off in the 70s. And yeah, that's they with the destruction of the family and all that kind of stuff. That's what they did. And then it kind of picked up again in the 80s, but certain concepts were getting very common, divorce being one of them. Like it was getting very, very common to have split families and things like that by the 1980s.
Yeah, and like you definitely, there's a, I don't call it a regression, but there's definitely a grassroots movement. And I've been listening to Owen Benjamin lately, and he was going off on the boomers and stuff, and there's definitely a grassroots movement going back to traditional values, because it's the socialism, communism agenda, or whatever you want to call it, the plot. People are just naturally rebelling to all of it, and I think it's almost instinctual.
I know why Owen attacks that generation, but here's the thing. That generation is old enough to still remember what America used to be like. If you completely shit all over that entire generation, and as opposed to just certain members who are kind of shitheads, you're gonna be ostracizing people who actually remember how good America used to be, at least culturally. Like we used to be a lot more wholesome. Families used to be a lot more positive and not all disjointed. Yes, people always had problems. I mean, I'm not saying that. Obviously, nothing's ever been perfect. But
Mhm.
all those people who are the baby boomers, which are the people who were born to like the World War II generation, who they call the greatest generation, they still had family values, which is why when that kept happening, when the whole baby boom generation was coming around, this is why they had to do what they did in the late 60s. There were too many people being born, and the elite freaked out and had to come up with a way to clamp down on this stuff, because there were just too many people who had good old-fashioned American values, and they were already trying to infiltrate. They already had been trying to, or I would say successfully infiltrating with their socialist communist ideas, because that's what this whole government takeover, worldwide takeover thing is. It's socialism slash communism. It's worldwide technocratic socialism.
Yeah, and it's you know, for people who this might not sound, where this sounds abrasive, you only need to, you know, uh, power corrupts absolutely. Like, just people gain power, they don't want to lose it, and that's going to go over decades, years, hundreds of years. And it's not that long ago, 1967 I think was Canada's confederation, but we still have the Queen's photos up in the arenas and government buildings. We're still a part of this Commonwealth. So to think that you wouldn't implement some type of system of control or distraction to keep the masses from revolting is just, not to be rude, but it's almost idiotic if you think just rainbows and unicorns, and everyone just to do whatever they want, as long as you don't step on the other person's grass.
Well, to pull back to pull the lens all the way back, here's what I tell people who just don't get into conspiracy stuff, but I happen to be trapped in a conversation with them. Why is it that hard to believe that people with money and power would get together with other people with money and power to keep their money and power? When you look at it in such a basic, stripped down context, it's freaking obvious, of course, people would do that. They wouldn't want anybody taking away what they have.
Just look at a micro scale. Why do you think homeowners associations exist? Because people who are well off want to keep their neighborhood the way it is with their rules. And it's just a micro imitating the macro.
It is. And then what always happens, well, I don't want to sound unfair. Not always, but you do see happening that even in HOA situations where like the worst kind of people get in charge of it and then start being dictatorial and annoying to to everyone who's there. It's like it's the same crap over and over again.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. And so I guess with the social engineering piece, definitely music and kind of getting into the pop culture with, what's your take on we were talking earlier with just, I guess, cinema, television, music, print, like all the ways that they've kind of, what's your bird's eye view of how the last 50 years has kind of puttered along with all this stuff?
Well, you can see it if you want to go back 50 years. Okay, so now you're getting back into the 60s. They really kicked it into high gear with the countercultural movement, which was blasting out an entire generation with drugs and the whole free love, which basically means screw around and not have any cares about what consequences, that kind of thing. And that spilled over into the 70s. People were still really big into drugs in the 70s. But you can see the grittiness start to kick in. I've said this so many times, like even when you look at like the way movies looked in the 60s, it's shot on like beautiful 35 millimeter film, even a lot of TV shows. And then you look at the 70s and everything kind of has like this darker and even grittier sound to it. And what's weird is knowing what I know about audio video gear and all that, the technology improved where it wasn't as tube driven and all those kinds of things that would fail more often and be noisier. But yet, even though it was switching over to solid state transistors and things throughout the 70s, it still has this grittierness to it. And you can really see it. Like the one example I give is you watch the original Star Trek, which ran from 66 to 69. There was 3 seasons. And it's shot on like this beautiful 35 millimeter film. And the sound is actually really good for the time period. Like everything looks beautiful about that show as far as production goes. Then you watch something like The $6 Million Man, which is the very early 70s. I think it started around 72 or so. And there's just this very different look and feel to it. And even though the technology I know improved in the 5 years-ish in between those shows starting, it actually, to me, looks and sounds inferior. And I really do wonder if that was intentional. Now, maybe it was a cost-cutting thing and they just didn't give a crap, but I don't know. There a lot of times with the stuff, there's ulterior motives.
Definitely. I can't remember who has this. Oh, it was Owen Benjamin's partner, Vox Day. And he was talking about like the literature. Like what's the one I never read it. One of my saving graces actually growing up was an absent parent. And I was mostly raised with my grandparents who kind of really didn't give a shit about me. Like, you went to school, that's all they cared about. They weren't asking about homework. So I basically just slid through all of grade school, almost all of high school without doing much of anything. But wow, is it Where the Red Ferns Grow? But so many of these books that are like standard reading, they're really crappy books. Like, they're not even intellectually amazing. They're not incredible works of art. They're just really crappy books that are dystopian and like weird.
So this would be in the 90s you're talking about? This kind of concept was getting pushed?
Nah, maybe even earlier. Just these like just the writing stuff that like the stuff that was being pushed as like must read for kids in school wasn't really that good. It was just like, it wasn't like Moby Dick or, some amazing piece of literature from 100 years ago, 200 years ago. Maybe you had like William Shakespeare, but yeah, it was like really weird, off-putting books.
That's interesting because I guess I was fortunate enough that I went to, especially my grade school years, far enough back that they were still doing the older classic stuff, like the literature and things. Like in high school, we definitely did Shakespeare, or even grade middle school. I remember we still did Shakespeare and things like that. So that's great. But yeah, well, the schooling is where you try and get the kids.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
interesting the way they're doing things now. They've made a critical error, in my opinion. And I always say that like they're pushing so hard that they're letting people slip through their fingers now, like whole groups of people, they're going to lose generations at this point, because with a lot of stuff where there's like a fandom involved, if
Mm,
you destroy it for the parents aren't going to show it to the children.
mm,
So if they don't know about it and don't give a crap about it, then within that generation starting to grow up, what happened? Well, that whole, whatever that happens to be, whether it's like an intellectual property film series, TV series, whatever it is, book series, if you've
mhm.
cropped all over it and that next generation is not being introduced to it, well, how are you going to get your messaging in? And I think they've pushed stuff so hard in the last 10 years that this apathy, it's like, yeah, who cares about that? Like, and a lot of people, of course, they don't realize that's what it is. They just see the term today that's used a lot as woke. But when
Mm,
you really boil down woke, it's very destructive concepts, like things that would break up, again, break up families. Like it's just like the whole family breakup of the 60s and 70s pushed even harder and faster with
Yeah.
more bizarre concepts, with things that are even further askew from the normal conservative type family that would have been around like in the 50s. Those kind of people would be appalled. And I'm not
mhm,
saying that lifestyle, that point of view is for everybody. It's not even for me. But the stuff that they're pushing now is insane. So the example I love to use, because everybody has at least heard of it, is Star Wars. Star Wars came out in 1977. I saw it when I was 4, and everybody in my family liked it because it was marketed, and well, it was created to be a family friendly thing. Like for like 12-year-olds is like the about the average intelligence that it was shooting for like if you're in that age group, you could understand it. And even younger kids could like it too, which is what I was. But it was not only like groundbreaking from a cinema standpoint, but it had the absolute basis of one of the most important concepts in literature and fiction literature, which is the hero's journey. So you went
mhm,
along that journey. When you start getting all the way up to today, where you now have several generations of fans who love this particular fictional property, I mean, legions and legions and legions of fans. Well, ever since it was sold to Disney, they've literally just tore it to shreds. And I
Mm.
can tell you for a fact, because I follow this stuff, that the people now are no longer showing like, I loved Star Wars when I was a kid. I want to show this to you, son or daughter.
mhm.
Like you can love it and appreciate it too. That's not happening anymore. And we know this because toy sales have completely plummeted. The big companies that produce this stuff are actually having huge issues with companies like Disney saying, what the hell? Like, you need to give us stuff that we can market. And they're not doing it. And it's year after year after year, it's been getting worse. Now they're at the point where it's like nobody gives a crap anymore. Their shows don't get very much viewing. The movies, like how does a Star Wars movie lose money? And they've had movies now that have lost money. Like that would be absolutely unheard of years ago.
Yeah, when I was, I don't know, I can't. My memory for when I was younger is pretty rough, but it was the 30th anniversary, and they remastered everything, and it was a huge thing, right? Like all three were being pumped out. They're putting on DVD. They're in the theaters, and that was the big push before they made the next round of the newest ones. And yeah, it was a huge thing. Like, all the people who were probably your age at the time, or the time when they re-released it, were all excited because it was um something from their childhood coming back.
Yeah, they got
And
to see it in theaters again, and they did they were what you're talking about is the special editions where George Lucas went back and messed with them a bit. Sometimes it was some cool stuff he added in. Sometimes he jerked around with stuff, and people didn't like what he did. But either way, they made money off of it all over again by putting it in the theaters. And then, of course, we had the next generation of those films, which was the prequels, which a lot of people didn't like, but I did because I never in a million years. It's kind of funny. People will complain about them. I'm like, yeah, compare them to the crap that's getting churned out now, and they look like freaking Shakespeare. But beside the point, I didn't expect the prequels to be as good as the originals because in my mind, this was backstory. We already know where the story ends. This is just filling in a bunch of blanks that as kids, we wanted to know what these stories were, but we didn't know what it was. So that's why I didn't have a big problem with them when people were like, this is not like the original. Like, of course it's not like the original. The original, he's never going to top them. He's not that age anymore. He's not hungry for it. People change as they get older, and George Lucas is just as human as anyone else.
I'm wondering if, because you have a young daughter, I'm wondering if you've seen this trend. So I had a partner previously who had young kids, and any of the box office hits for children or families. So, whether it was, I'm trying to think, like Trolls or was
Paw Patrol.
Well, no, like Hollywood movies. So there was, I think, Boss Baby. Something I noticed was these movies, animated Pixar movies, would do really well, and then they would get a children's show, and then the parents were like, "Oh, the movie was nice, it was good, there wasn't anything too suspect in the movie," and then they're like, "Oh, I'm okay with you watching the TV show." And then they hire voice actors that sound like the real actors. They don't have to pay the original actors. But then like the content in the television shows is like, oh my God. It's disturbing sometimes.
Right. And I think they used to do that and get away with it more. But now, for instance, Disney didn't make any money, from what I understand, from any movie that came out in 2023 because people have gotten that wise to all their, I mean, a lot of people just call it the gay agenda, but it's all that kind of stuff, like all that stuff that's being shoved into their socialism concepts. Like, it's like, look, I don't know how one of the biggest capitalist companies like Disney that always thrived off of capitalism is pushing socialism, communism concepts. Like that's batshit crazy. That shouldn't be. You wouldn't make the money you had made all these decades. And the thing is, that's because it's not for that anymore. It's for propaganda. They're getting propped up by companies like BlackRock and Vanguard. But from what I understand, even that's failing now because I guess regardless of how much money they have, eventually that well is still even going to run dry. And the stocks are tanking. So maybe they thought people really were just stupid enough to go along with it. And a lot of people did for a while, but now they've caught on. This is what I keep seeing over and over again. Viewing figures in the tank, films all losing money. They're spending way too much money to make these movies and getting no return on it and losing sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars, making very bad casting decisions. All this to me is idiotic. Like if I was the evil elite scumbag wanting to manipulate people, I would cater to every whim of the people I want to manipulate and then slip in all the stuff I wanted to do, which is what they used to do years ago. They would put it in there. Give people what they want so they're hungry for it and they want more. It's like, oh, that was awesome. Now they've let like the middle management, Wayne McCroy and I joke about this. It's like the middle management are freaking idiots and they're the ones making all the decisions what to push and how to push it, and they're not very bright. They're not like the original Rockefeller, who was like a son of a bitch of a guy, really cunning, very very dark, and you just don't see it anymore. Now you see these people who are just kind of clueless, and they're just making bad decision after bad decision. Now they have nearly limitless money to play with on like the elite level, but the stuff that they're pushing on us, what I'm seeing anyway, because I try to follow, I call them the nerd channels. There's a lot of channels that like they actually watch this crap and dissect it and all. So I just kind of keep an eye on what they're saying about stuff. And it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And this is how I know, like, as far as the stuff that they're putting out right now, it's all tanking. Nobody wants it. Even like normal movies that you think might do okay, that's tanking. There's very few exceptions. There have been a few exceptions where the occasional movie will be a blockbuster. Barbie and Oppenheimer were the two big ones last year. And Barbie was very woke, but they had such power with that name and it hadn't been trampled all over yet. It still made money. I think if they tried to do that again, I don't think it would be as successful because there were a lot of man-hating things put in there. Like, because I'm sure you guys are aware that's one of the big things is stomp on the masculine figure and make them look bad, and that's been going on for forever, really. I mean, you can look all the way back to The Simpsons and Married with Children, where the dad is a complete idiot.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, definitely. And I think what you and Wayne said, it's like almost, it's like their chickens came home to roost. It's like, well, you dumb down education, you dumb down everybody. Like I said, with the literature, it's like you weren't giving them, the meditations of Marcus Aurelius. You weren't giving them, the Bible, the Quran. You weren't doing the trivium. So now all these dumbed down people are in the positions of power, and that's what you have leading this whole circus.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what it is. For instance, you look at the two numpties that are running that Rings of Power show for Amazon, where they pretty much crapped all over all the characters and concepts of The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. When you hear the two people in charge speak, it's like, oh my God, how did you get this job? You're morons. Like, they're just really freaking stupid idiots. They're just not smart people. And then you hear the people around them speak, and you're like, how did you guys get here? And they are a product of all the social engineering that's been going on for decades. So these are people who are like in their late 30s and 40s and stuff like that. And they're just never would have made it in Hollywood if this was like 50 years ago.
Cassandra agrees.
So where do you go to watch quality movies now? Or like, how do you find quality cinema? Because this is something that Jeff and I run into all the time. We're like, you know what? It would be so nice to watch a movie. And we're always disappointed by whether it's like the storyline or the character development or the...
Dariya's ruined all entertainment for me, basically, which is kind of a blessing, because I was guilty of, I just want to veg out tonight and I'll put something on. It's like, oh, this new thing's out or that. And then with her, it's like, we don't really watch a lot of stuff.
Well, I'm very picky.
And she's very picky. And then I'll bring something maybe from like I've watched years before, and I think, oh, this is hilarious. And then we'll watch it, and I'm like, this is really stupid. And it's just stupid humor. It's haughty humor. It's and then we'll watch movies where it's maybe not supposed to be like that. And it's like so dark. And because now like we watched Gladiator for my birthday. So I'm like I just want something nostalgic. I like one of my favorite movies. And then we finished watching. I'm like, I'm good for another year on movies, because I'm like, I get suspended disbelief. I get pulled in all different directions. It's like, I'm kind of glad I'm not watching anything.
And that was what, 20 odd years ago? And it was a good film.
Yeah.
But I mean,
yeah.
How many times are you going to watch the same one? But to answer your question, I very rarely watch new stuff. I tried with some of the things that are in the properties that I liked, and it's I just accepted that it's over. Like, no, until some kind of shift changes in a mass social way, these people are just going to keep putting this garbage out. Like, everything I loved as a child, they have completely pooped all over. And it's like, okay, well, I'm just not going to watch it ever again. So most of the time, if I watch something, which I really don't watch that much, to be honest with you, but if I do, it's old. Like, last year, I watched all of the original Monty Pythons again, like all the episodes. I didn't even know if I'd seen them all, because I had watched them as a kid on PBS, and I watched all, whatever it was, 4 seasons, I think there were. So that was cool. And obviously, they're making a lot of references to things that were specific to the time and to the United Kingdom. So it's like, I don't even know who some of these people are that they're mentioning, the politicians and things. But still, their writing and their delivery is phenomenal. Like, all 6 of the original Monty Python members were just extreme geniuses of their craft. You don't have that anymore, at least not very many.
No,
Like things
yeah.
like stand-up comedy and things like that. Like, where's the George Carlin and the Bill Hicks and people like that today?
Oh,
Gone, long
yeah,
gone.
definitely. Well, Owen Benjamin definitely ruined the stand-up comedy for me because now, after listening to him and the first couple, because I heard him on you guys, and I think I may have seen him before, and like, oh, that's a cool concept. I like what he's doing, and I listened to his stuff. I'm like, okay, it's a little much for me, and then it started to grow on me, and it's like, like, yeah, I started listening to this other stuff. I'm like, it's like with everything else. I'm like, this is just like too raunchy, too disgusting, or it's just like it's not even that funny. But you're almost compelled because you hear the audience laugh and hear the stuff. You're like, oh, well, that was kind of funny, wasn't it? It's like, wait, actually, it wasn't that great.
Well, a lot of times it's just going for shock value. And if it's very
Yeah.
mainstreamy, like Owen can say whatever he wants because he has all his own platforms.
Mhm.
Jim Core's great still. He's still got it because he also has his own platform. So he can challenge mainstream stuff and he's got a large enough fan base that he can get away with it. But if you're talking about somebody who's still getting on mainstream networks and things like that, comedy's gone. I mean, Jerry Seinfeld just said this the other day, and he's like 72 now, so he doesn't give a crap. That it's not funny anymore because everyone's catering to this super left wing leaning political all these ideas. That's where they're coming from. They're coming from that side of the political spectrum, and it's all manipulation. I mean, politics are just as ridiculous as anything else. But
Mhm.
as far as the way that mentality comes, that's people who are on the far left think that way. The people on the far right are more like your very conservative Christians, and sometimes they take it too far, and they
Mhm.
can be just as annoying as the crazy social justice warrior types. So it's all divide and conquer. It really is.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I like to tell people like when I was younger, when I would get home, The Simpsons would come on like right after you're done school. And between all the channels that we had available, I could watch The Simpsons from like 3 o'clock till like 10 o'clock at like end on one channel and start on another. And I look back now with like what we're trying to build with Finding Polaris and goals I have in my life now. And it's like they got me and I wasted so many years of my life with useless media or you know in unfulfilling relationships where you can fill the void of the awkwardness or the discontent with media and alcohol or drugs and it the system definitely worked. Like they did a bang up job. They got me real good. And I woke up in ways, but like yeah, with the TV and movies or music or just, distracting yourself from maybe a life that's not feeling so fulfilling or and I still have like I have a few friends with it. Oh, did you see like you mentioned the Lord of the Rings and all I had to hear was the press releases about what they did to it. I'm like, yeah, there's nothing that you're gonna say that's gonna get me to watch this new stuff. Like with the Star Wars and hear people like, oh, it was actually really cool. It's like, no, you're not gonna get me to take any of that in. It's not worth my time.
No, it's not. Well, the stuff when you were young, it got me too, but that's also because they were trying, as far as I can tell, they were trying to be entertaining. They were trying to put out some decent stories and things like that. Think about like throughout the 80s, how the concept of the blockbuster movie that had started in the late 70s, they were always trying to push the envelope, better special effects and just all that
Mhm.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, now they have computers that if you have enough money to throw at the special effects department, you can have literally anything on the screen you wanted. So that doesn't matter anymore, but the story isn't there. So you can have all the money in the world and have the coolest sets and the best computer generated animation and all that shit. It doesn't matter because there's no story there. There's like literally, if you pulled that out and it's like, okay, now you have a budget like it's 1972. What do you got left? The reason why things like Doctor Who from the 70s really caught on was because they had a very strong lead actor playing the Doctor, and the stories were great. They were not all of them. Some of them there's always stinkers, but so many of them were well written because they couldn't lean on anything else. They couldn't lean on special effects and things like that. The
Mhm.
budgets just didn't exist, and the technology really didn't exist yet either.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because it's a dichotomy. So there's a person I followed for years named Arthur Haynes, and he's a naturalist, I guess, a nature person in that niche, and he was a taxonomist. So it's like a more in depth than a botanist when it comes to plants. And he came up with a theory that humanity's almost splitting. So we have Homo sapien, which is like I think the wise tool maker or tool, someone who like the humans using the tools in the form we see now. And he almost proposes that we're at a split, and today more than 5-10 years ago when I first heard him speak about this. Now we have the people who will park their kid in front of the iPad. Simultaneously, we've got a back to the land movement where we're not just the weird hippie family that doesn't want our daughter having a phone or a screen for 20 years. Now it's growing where people are, no, I don't want that. Like, we're not going to do that, or we're going to homeschool. So it's like you said, they pushed it so deep down our throat.
Yep.
That people are just naturally rebelling, where it's like, yeah, we're not going to watch your crappy shows. We're not going to do this. But simultaneously, you got people digging in deeper. It's like everyone knows McDonald's is terrible for you. And then you still have people that are like, they're still going, they're still loving it.
So the other split that he proposes is Homo sapien domesticus, and it's essentially a human that's embodying the same like domestic qualities as cattle. So I can't remember all the pieces of it, but there was like loss of fertility, definitely like health decline. There was, I can't remember.
Well, be all the things you see.
They're living in an enclosure, so there was a few pieces where it's like, yeah, essentially the Homo sapien domesticus has the exact same embodiment as a domesticated animal.
And then his contention was the other side is the Homo sapien neo aborigines, aboriginalis. Yeah, so it's like the new aboriginals. So these people who are looking to revert back to the land, to learn about herbs, to get into the nature, to buck the system.
That absolutely is happening, because I've commented on that quite a few times in the last few years too. When I was growing up, unless you came from that kind of environment, like you were farmers' children and you came from the country and all that, and that was just like what you were used to, that's your background. And some people would leave and go to the big city, whatever. But a lot of people, no, that they just kind of kept the traditions going, and they'd inherit the land and all that, which is wonderful. But over the course of the 20th century, more and more people, I mean, it flipped. It used to be like 80-some% agrarian, and then 20% were industrialized, and then that flipped, and now we're at the point where it's like 95-5, where like only 5% of the people are still doing the land thing. However, while we're not talking about massive farms and things like that, because they've pushed so hard, especially in the last 10 years, you are now seeing a huge return to, I mean, what do you want to call it? Like, just like the older ways, like people are just turning their backs on it. Yeah. Well, they did this to themselves. Again, if you had just been smarter about it and not so heavy-handed, like when you have these people who are like crazy social justice warriors who just go and try and ruin every single thing that every person likes. And I don't just mean a TV show, just everything. They bitch about it. Just nobody cares. Like, most people still aren't that way. And they've just turned their back on, like, yeah, I'm done with this. Like, I don't need to be around this crap. And you're seeing them just get land and go have their own little homestead. They're growing their own food. Well, that's because you made the food absolute garbage. And some people don't want to be a fat blob sitting in front of a television set.
Well, it's almost, I could see, they almost slipped up where they tightened the noose, but it was at the same time that they're shoving a lot of BS down people's throats. And it's hard to digest it or swallow this BS they're handing us, because at the same time, economically, socially, it's tougher to buy a house. And I'm not just talking about now in the last 10 years, like it's been like that for a long time. you know, if you weren't sure what you wanted to do in college, or you didn't go straight out and get a job, like a majority of people I know, they might be well off, and we're a, you know, a pretty prosperous town. We're a mining town, so there's, you know, you could just throw a rock and hit, you know, a business making a couple $1,000,000 a year. But, you know, if you didn't get started working at 20, you might not have a house. You might be struggling to get by with, you know, your two vehicles and two kids and a dog. So it's almost like they, as they cinch the noose up, they're trying to push all this new socialist crap. But, you know, like when I was in high school, you know, it wasn't a booming economy, and it wasn't also a complete recession, but it wasn't easy. It was still it was still a struggle for people.
Right. Well, they really screwed up in the last couple years. And I hate to always drag it back to mainstream politics, and I don't know why they did this, but like they tried to sell all the young not kids, but like your younger late teens, early 20s on Orange Man Bad, and they shoved that everywhere. I mean, you just no matter what you turned on that was coming from the mainstream, it was an attack on this one guy, which is
Oh
really
gosh.
and I'm not like a huge right wing leaning person either. I'm actually a registered libertarian, but they're pretty freaking useless too. But I like that point of view that falls as far as like the way I would like to see things go. That leans more towards the way I think about things. But I think
Yeah.
all in general are a trap. But that's not my point. So it seems that they put this half brain dead old man in charge, but he also didn't do anything to make these young people's lives easier. And as far as the mainstream is concerned, all those people, not all of them, but a lot of them are turning their backs and saying, you didn't do anything to help us. In fact, I can't afford my rent, my groceries. I can't go and do anything because I have to work 3 jobs. That's a huge mistake, in my opinion. Now, this could be part of a bigger plan to really collapse the American economy and bring in their central bank digital currency stuff, which is, of course, a huge concern. And we know that's part of the greater plan for the world government because they need that. I don't think boots on the ground would work anymore. It just seems like we're in too much of a different era. Maybe that would have worked in the World War II era, but just, man, things are so different now. And I haven't completely figured out if things like China especially are serving the globalists or just kind of going along with it and manipulating them because they do things that seem to work against them too. So it is very, as far as worldwide geopolitics, it's very confusing about who's doing what, but it doesn't change the fact that there are central banks controlling everything. I think there's only 2 or 3 countries left, and I think it's only 2 now, but I haven't checked in a while. So if you have a central bank that's catering to the worldwide central bank, well, then you're being manipulated.
Yeah, well, same, like it's different, but a similar. So Canada, I would say it's the cliche of like we're too polite. You never really see a lot of people get up in arms with politics. And when Trudeau got elected, you know, whatever it was 8 years ago, yeah, some people were like, oh, whatever, this sucks. But like, you never really got Canadians actually riled up against or for someone. You know, there was the, oh, we like this person or that person, but like there wasn't the vitriol there is now for Justin Trudeau. And you know, like now people, the actual liberal people who, you know, would never be political, but just they wanted rights for gay people. They wanted people to be treated fairly. They wanted benefits for the elderly or the disabled or what, you know, like just your typical liberal person who cares about society and, you know, wants there to be government funding for, you know, troubled youth and all that type of stuff. Now those people have been gaslit and are becoming political because now, you know, the things that were, I guess, like their point of view, the things that were important to them are getting all trampled on. And now it's almost like everyone's pissed off.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure that it should be obvious to Canadians, in my opinion. I've told people who I'm friends with who are Canadians, I'm like, leave. Like, it is obvious. Same thing with people in Australia that I've spoken to. Like, it is obvious that during the COVID make-believe nonsense, that they were trying to see how far they could take it, and your countries were basically under dictatorial rule. So get the hell out. Just go somewhere else. Sorry to be so blunt and harsh about it, but it is clear that they will put these rules down and the majority of the people will go along. And they used the old Edward Bernays technique, the technique of whatever you're trying to sell or whatever concept you're trying to pitch, attach it to an emotion, and you'll get more people to go along with whatever it is. Well, with the COVID nonsense, it was fear, extreme fear. And they got people convinced that something that had a 99 point whatever percent survivability was going to kill millions of people. And they literally said that on the news. I remember very early on, I laughed and said, no freaking way. No way is there going to be a disease that's that bad that's going to kill that many people. Like, no way. And I laughed it off for a while until they really tried to get serious about it. And then, of course, they did. But the thing is, that never happened. So they had to start fabricating numbers to make it look like it was worse than it was. And they've even come out and admitted that now, that a lot of the numbers they fudged weren't because of COVID deaths and all that. And then the vaccine crap killing people. So this is what they do. This is how they do it. But in Australia and Canada, you saw them just get absolute, like, 1939 Germany level of stomping down on whatever rights you guys are supposed to have there. And it got bad in the United States too, especially if you were, this is weird. This is the thing that really threw me and why I started talking more about political leanings. The people who were more towards the left and especially far left really got into the whole mask mandate and pushing all this. Like, they went right along with everything the government said. They acted as like the brown shirts for the government. And it's such a weird flip because in the 1960s, I would think that I would be on the left-hand political spectrum, like against war and corporations and all that. Now it's the other way around to an extreme, really. It's literally flipped. All the people on the left are the ones that are sucking up to the government and all the corporations, and at the same time spouting socialism and communism, which is hysterical. So it's like their entire mentality that they pushed on certain people doesn't even make sense when you break it down to what it actually is saying.
Yeah, and definitely with the brown shirt stuff, because I don't know if we noticed much politically or with the government here where we are. Like, mind you, midway through, I kind of ran away with Dariya to her remote location. But yeah, the people basically self-policed it for the most part.
They did. A lot of them
They
did.
didn't need anything.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly, and I noticed it what was happening. I was pointing out, it was like, hey, just say no. If enough people, I used to say things like, go get 24 people and walk into your target. What are they going to do about 24 people walk around without masks and just telling the staff to fuck off?
Now I think it's kind of flipped, and Darius called this out on me. Is, I love David Wolf's Telegram page. It's a source of great memes and hilarity, but now they've almost weaponized the news to a whole new group of people who never watched the news, but now they're sucked into every little, have you seen what they're doing now? Have you seen, now you've got a whole, probably 10x the amount of people who are actually paying attention to what news comes out. And now every, look what they're doing in schools, or look at they've weaponized it. Now all these people are stuck into a paralysis fear thing who were just in their own little world before.
Fear's a powerful weapon. And again, it's the Edward Bernays thing, tie an emotion to it. Some people do just get off on the negativity and the chaos. And because we have a permanent 24-hour news cycle that started with CNN back in the 80s, and you realize, like, there's not really enough bad things going on. That's why they have to fabricate and overblow certain stories and things like that just to keep it going. But we're in such a connected world now that if somebody has that mentality where they like that stuff, they can find it. And it's gotten to the point now where YouTube, which used to only thrive predominantly anyway off of independent creators, they've flipped that around and have the algorithm strangling independent content creators and only pushing far left ideals and really heavily pushing actual corporate channels. No matter how many times on YouTube, if I'm whatever it is I happen to be watching, I've tried a zillion times. They will push a CNN or a Fox thing on me, and I say, don't recommend channel. And it won't for a little while, and then it'll crop back up. It's like, how many times do I have to say the same thing? Now, if I put that for an independent content creator, if I say, don't recommend channel, it won't come back. Not that I've ever noticed anyway. But if it's a mainstream thing, they'll try again and again and again and again. So it just shows you what they're trying to do. It's just more manipulation.
Yeah, and then funny enough, what I find now is it's interesting because I used to recommend this to people back when, like, I would say Facebook's, at least in my perspective, because I don't really go on there much, I would say Facebook is dwindling, especially among the youth. It's less popular. I think COVID
It is, as far as I know,
that.
because my daughter's 20 and she said that most of the people her age don't give a crap about Facebook.
Yeah, and something so something I used to recommend to people when I would coach them back in the day was I'd say, okay, like you want to lose weight, or you want to gain muscle, or you want to learn to do a backflip, or you're getting into jujitsu, or yourself for music. I would say, okay, go on Facebook, follow 50 music pages, and then basically inundate yourself with your algorithm where you're just surrounded by the thing that you're trying to get good at, or the thing you want to achieve. It's like, you want to eat healthy, well, make sure you're following like 10 green smoothie pages, or and basically just cater your algorithm to the thing that you're trying to get after. And
Well,
now, go ahead.
YouTube's funny. Like, for instance, I looked up a thing on how to fix something in my kitchen, and then I got like 10 other recommendations on how to do that started cropping up in my recommended video feed. So I had to go back and delete it out of my history. So I've actually got my main YouTube account pretty well streamlined, and they'll always try and shove stuff in there. They finally figured out that I despise sports, so very rarely will I ever see something for sports. But if you look up something that's like especially different than what you normally look at, they'll then bombard you with all that. So I had to go, I forget what it was, like a stove or something I looked up on how to fix it. And all of a sudden I found 10 more videos coming up recommended. Here's how to fix the stove. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's like, nah, I just went back and deleted all the history. So that's actually something I could tell people that does seem to work fairly well. If you're looking certain things up, but you don't want more of it, just go into your YouTube history and delete it. And just keep things in there that you actually would like to be recommended. You want to see a certain genre of music or whatever it happens to be.
Well, now I find what is, I consume a lot of content at work, and I've been like a podcast junkie for years. Like I sometimes tell people, like, I've been listening to health podcasts for like 15 years almost. So it's like I've listened to top doctors and all these different opinions for the last 15 years. I almost have a medical degree in just all these different aspects. But now I find that with so many alternatives, like YouTube doesn't even enter my life hardly anymore, unless it's like you said, oh, I gotta fix the stove, or oh, I want to redo the basement, I'm gonna look this up, and it's only really useful for that. And besides that, or maybe some musical stuff, or things that aren't controversial whatsoever, but for entertainment, for knowledge seeking. Yeah, like, it's so easy now to find alternatives out there that aren't the mainstream sources.
Well, if you're still doing mainstreamy stuff, like a whole chunk of me that's for lack of a better term, non-conspiratorial oriented. I'm an audio gear nerd, and I like watching channels about music production and things like that. So that stuff doesn't really get throttled. So if you're doing something that is completely away from anything politically charged, you can still do okay on YouTube, as far as I know.
Oh yeah, like our dog trainer's on there. We have a guy we follow who does tile work when we have to tile our bathrooms, and he's really awesome. Definitely the musical stuff, anything like that. Definitely gear, like when we're figuring out podcasts or website stuff. Like, yeah, it's great for that stuff where it's just almost tutorial or how to is great. But besides that, it's like, oh gosh, like if it's not almost a how to or like a review, like you said, for gear, it's just, you're gonna have the crap plastered in there that you don't want to see.
Right. But yeah, YouTube has become borderline useless if you're trying to do anything that bucks the system. Thankfully, Rumble's pretty good about not censoring. And one thing did come up, I think, a couple of months ago, where they were, oh man, I can't remember what it's about. But anyway, they stood by the content creator, even though they even said, it's like, hey, this isn't our personal point of view, but we stand behind the creator's right to be on this platform to say it. And they fed off the government or the corporation, whatever was going after them. I honestly just don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
So that's good. So for the moment, but the problem is, Rumble's good about that, and Rockfin has been good about it, as far as I know. Still, those two channels or those two platforms are good for having a channel to say pretty much what you want. And as a matter of fact, I've said some pretty harsh stuff on Rockfin. And yeah, I never worry about what I say on Rockfin.
And with Pro, you guys run your own servers, right?
Well, that's what I was going to get to. Here's the thing. That might be true right now, but those are you're still agreeing to their terms and using their platform. So they can do whatever they want whenever they want, and you can't do a bloody thing about it. This is what makes Crow 777 Radio completely different than, as far as I know, everybody else besides a handful of people who also have their own platforms. If you have your own platform and you're serving your own content, nobody's telling you what to do.
Yeah, that's something we're trying to figure out for ourselves with our website. Like right now, we're trying to keep the interviews just in our membership, and we're hosted through another whatever, like a service provider site. And how we want to move forward with, because our niche is with the nature stuff, and that can encompass a lot, but also how do we get our message and our point of view across without running into that issue where, we're not in a rush to get onto all the podcast apps, and we really like the method that you guys use of keeping the juicy stuff behind the paywall and then putting the other stuff out to all the common areas. But it's definitely tricky, especially nowadays, because with our niche, we get a lot of people who, even just with Instagram posts we make, of just ridiculous stuff that they want to push back on. Like Dariya has a viral video about wiping your ass with snow after you've gone to take a shit outside, and people just coming out of the woodwork to, oh, this is terrible and blah blah blah. And we made another one about wiping with moss, and people, oh, do you know how long it takes moss? You have like the eco social justice warriors coming out of the woodwork to let you know their opinion, and it's just, it's not bad yet, but we're also not, we don't have any real huge audience or traction. And you only imagine once you go against the grain, how many people come out with like vile hatred for, just something as simple as saying there's no such thing as an invasive plant. The people have been programmed, and we've done plant walks before where people freak out because they're like, oh, that's invasive. You have to kill it, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, is it really? because I've done a lot of hiking in the backcountry and never seen it out there. Seems to only see it in the city where you've dug up the entire place and, you know, put houses and parks and stuff. It's, you know, it's funny. I never see this invasive thing like out in the wild. And that's not to say that there's not things that are invasive that you're not going to find in the wild. Because, you know, an example is there's like a little clam thing that's, you know, all over Ontario and in lakes and stuff like that. But it's like people just lose their mind when you challenge that narrative. It's something as simple as like a plant, you know?
Well, it's like that with everything. I know you guys listen to the show, so I'm assuming you know who Fortune de Saint Germain is.
Yeah.
He's actual royalty. He's a count. So he's got this interesting perspective. He's also a doctor, like an actual mainstream allopathic doctor, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff that he studied. And what's funny is, and I completely agree with him too, because I've said similar things, but his way of putting it is, it's planet of the experts. Everybody thinks they know everything. They don't have a pot to piss in and two nickels to rub together, but they know everything, and you can't tell them any different. And he's totally right.
Yeah.
This is why I turn YouTube comments off when if I happen to upload something to YouTube, I usually just turn the comments off because I don't want to freaking hear it. Like everybody's got to throw their opinion in and all that. It's like that's not what I'm here for. I'm not here to hear everybody's cockamamie ridiculous crap. Like I'm putting information out for your benefit. If you don't like it, don't watch. Period. And if that sounds a little self-centered and whatever, oh well. I mean, I'm doing my best to look at whatever the subject matter is, break it down into a digestible form for everybody, and I put it out. It's the same thing we do at Crow 777 Radio. And we
Mhm.
do a pretty good job of it most of the time. So I don't need Planet of the Experts with 600 comments underneath some video that I put out. So I just turn them off because I don't want to hear it.
Oh, definitely. Well, it's funny because I joke around with Dariya sometimes, because I see it a lot with health stuff, right? So a lot of my health stuff is, you know, probably similar to what you guys get on the show, but also some really far out stuff. And then, you know, I might comment something, and it's funny. I'll say that I'll tell Dariya like, "Oh, did you hear that person?" It's like their their programming just runs. It's like you say the key word, and whatever they were taught in grade school or on the magic school bus, it's like they just get taken over. And it's like, oh, like you cannot do that. It is this way, blah, blah, blah. You know, they just become an automaton, and then they just regurgitate the speaking point that they were taught years ago. And it's so funny. It's uncontrollable. And you definitely see it like with the geocentrism versus the heliocentric stuff. You definitely see it with that. It's like an easier way to picture it. You just say one thing like, no, it does this, even though they have no direct experience or no clue or anything like that.
It happens in the audio world too, because I watch so many videos about audio gear. It's interesting how some people like the same piece of gear, but people have widely varying opinions on how something works. So it's just human nature, I think. So that's why I said I just turn them off. And although the majority of comments are nice things or supportive things, and I really do appreciate that, there's always the turd in the punch bowl that I'm like, yep, not dealing with it.
Well, before we head off, I'm wondering to pick your mind for people who are into music, since that's a big part of your life. You know, getting started. So an example of my personal life is when I was younger, I was in a multicultural group, and we played a type of zither. It's a Hungarian cithara. It's a stringed instrument you play. It's like a sitar.
Okay. Well, I definitely
Where
know
would
that.
you like? I think, and with being with Dariya, she does a lot of singing. Yeah, for people to get back into music and instruments, where would you suggest people start?
You mean with music production or just playing them? Like, how do you mean?
Just like getting back to an instrument in their hand and getting, you know, singing or music. What any advice you have for people getting back to that type of thing?
Well, if you want to take an instrument up, there has never been a time like today, where affordable but decent quality instruments are out and available. When I was growing up, the budget instruments for like guitars and basses and things like that were pretty much garbage. And it was worse the further you go back in time. Like they'd be really bad, like very hard to play, sound like dog shit, crappy parts. Now, not to say that they don't cheap up on things to make a profit margin, but like your entry level guitar today, just to use guitar as an example, since that's what I know so well, is light years ahead of anything from like 30 years ago. So no matter what instrument you want to play, just do your homework and do shopping. And here's where something like YouTube is incredibly useful. If it's something that's being produced by a manufacturer and it's available to the general public, there's a good chance you're going to find reviews out there. Just do that. That's the easiest thing, especially for like music production, things like that. A new interface comes out or a new microphone, whatever it happens to be, new pedal. There's groups of channels that's what they do for a living. They review these products, and the best ones will shut the hell up and demonstrate it for you.
Mm.
So that's my advice to you. It depends upon what you want to get into. Now you're talking about more folksy instruments, but there's whole channels dedicated to that too. You know, you'll find mandolin oriented channels and things like that. So yeah, it's never been easier to get in and find stuff to learn from. Like when I was growing up, so that I started playing guitar when I was 17. So like you had to buy guitar for the Practicing Musician magazine and stuff like that if you wanted to learn stuff other than like just sitting and listening to the record and learning it by ear. Now, I mean, there's a billion websites that have, if you're talking about mainstream stuff, songs already ready to go. And like I do it to this day, even though I've been playing for over 30 years, I still cheat. I just grab a tab from somewhere or throw a video on that's 5 minutes long so that I can play the song quickly and not have to sit there and listen to it over and over again a few times. They're like, oh, okay, here's the progression. It's like, no, somebody's already done that. I'm just going to do it. Like I wanted to learn Live Forever by Oasis the other day. Well, I knew it 5 minutes later because like it was just that easy to find it. You know what I mean?
Wow. That's awesome. And I highly encourage anyone who thinks Jason is out of his mind to tune into Crow 777 Radio. And I know probably some things, if you're not on par with what he's speaking about, might sound crazy or abrasive or conspiratorial. I would urge you to check out some of their episodes on Tavistock or the one you guys just released about the socialism and communism. I think if you've been studying this stuff for as long as he has, or even myself, it's almost the writings on the wall. And if you need the light speed course, Crow and Jason's work is incredible. So yeah, if you just want to let people know where they can find you and where all your work is, yeah.
So the good thing is all of it's in one place, and that's at our main website, crow777radio.com, and that's spelled CRROW777radio.com. And the reason why it's spelled weird with two R's is because that's actually Crow's his real name. Those are his initials. So, and the 777, for all the people who like to get really weird about numbers, and there's definitely something to numerology in a big, big way, but it has nothing to do with stupid, evil Aleister Crowley crap that so many numpties out there get their panties in a bunch over. The three letters of his name that start with CRR also have 7 letters each in his name. So it was like a cute little moniker he came up with years ago, long before he got into any kind of internet-based things. Do you remember, you guys might be old enough, that like in the late 90s and early 2000s, people are kind of making up weird names as their screen names. It's not, they still do it, but not as much anymore. Like a lot of times people will just use their names. But it was a big thing when the internet first started coming around that people would make kind of weird handles and things like that.
I joke around. It's funny. I tell Dariya, like back when we had a computer class in grade school, and the teacher said, "Don't use your real name. You don't want to put your real name on the internet." You know, so it's like make an email, but make it, make something up or whatever. Now we've gone completely reverse. Now it's like everyone's getting rid of their screen names. It's like their whole name, their email address is their name. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's a very different world on the internet these days, but you're totally right. Back then, It was you made up a weird handle. Well, that's where the Crow 777 comes from. That's what I was getting at. Because Rose likes to go on a lot of other people's channels, like live streams and things like that. And there's always a couple of numpties that show up where they want to make a big deal about 777. It's like, that's all it is. Like, it's literally that. If you think the work we do, there's some kind of like we're shills for the government and like all that kind of crazy stuff. It's like, look, I say this about everybody, not just ourselves. You judge a tree by its fruit. Like, who's putting out good content and who's not? Are there any super red flags? Well, then you should be careful. So I don't know what else to tell people. Some people you just can't convince. Like, they're very convinced that, oh, you did that, so that's what that means. Well, you don't know your ass from a hole in the ground, but that's fine. So anyway, Rose has actually made playlists and things like that for a lot of the subjects that we do. So like law and things like that. There's a Wayne McCroy playlist. So because we've got we've probably got over 600 episodes at this point because we did some ones that were out of sequence. So that's a lot of shows to go through. So certain ones, like there's a playlist that's all the ones I did that I wrote and did just with Crow by ourselves, which is a lot of them. And then there's stuff for like health, like all the things law. We did a lot of law stuff trying to figure out how a lot of this crazy law stuff really works. So anyway, that's there. If you are very new to what we do, that's an easy way to get your feet wet if there's certain things you're interested in. And the way we do it is we have our own platform, which means we pay for everything, which is expensive. So for people who get really bent out of shape that the truth should be free, this is another thing that irritates me because I've dealt with it being in and out of bands all my life, and even friends who are artists, like art outside of music, paintings and things like that. Everybody seems to think that if it doesn't come from a major corporation, that they shouldn't have to pay for it, that your time means nothing, that you aren't worth spit and you should just give me that. It just really doesn't work that way. That's just not the real way things work. So if you value something, you support what you think is offering you value. So with that being said, we do charge for our second hour. It's $8 a month. With that, you get access to everything. You get all the shows. You can watch the film anytime you want for free. There's forums that are actually really, really good. And it's now going back years. There's lots of incredible engagement on there. And now the newest thing is Crow has gotten a very nice solar scope and is starting to do solar work. That's only going to be available in one place. So if you're familiar with anything, if you've seen the film, for instance, or watched any of his old YouTube footage on the moon, all the cool stuff that he shot years ago, he's doing the same thing now, but with the sun. And that is going nowhere except behind the paywall on the website because he's very tired of people ripping stuff. And then they go viral on TikTok and don't even put the credit to him. So that's rude. I mean, to be blunt about it, that's really a really shitty thing to do. Like, it takes a long time to shoot footage like that and to put it and edit all that stuff. That's like a dude's work that you're just ripping off for free and then you're reaping the benefits. So he's never going to do that again. Like all the stuff that went on YouTube and people took it and just did whatever they wanted with it, as well as all the stupid comments that came along with it. So that's all going to be on the website only.
Yeah, I love the search feature, and I've been when I can now I go back and I try to listen back from the beginning to the old episodes to try to catch myself up.
Well, we did a lot of fun stuff in the beginning, but it's like now that we've done all those, we're always trying to think of, okay, well, what haven't we covered now after 600 episodes? So that's why we had started having more guests on, because it was some people would have very specific points of interest that we also liked what they were doing topically, but they've done more research on it. So as opposed to me taking a few weeks to look into something versus somebody who's done something for years, if it happens to be something that's a little more obscure as well, they probably have more information to offer. So that's how that kind of started happening over the years as well.
Well, we it's definitely a must in our house. And yeah, thank you so much, Jason, for joining us. And I highly encourage everyone to go check out Pro 777 Radio. Our 2 episodes are on there, as well as many other awesome ones. And yeah, thank you so much, Jason.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, anytime.